Welcome to the Gregory Macur podcast, where we explore key questions in philosophical and practical ways. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Gregory Macur podcast. I'm here with my brother, Sean Macur. How do I even introduce my brother? He is the kind of guy who, when he makes his mind up about something, he runs at it like crazy and he gets it. And that happens every time. For me, he's personally been an inspiration and definitely somewhat of a father figure throughout life. He works up quite high up in the nuclear engineering industry. Is that right, Sean?
Yep.
Yeah, and he's coming towards the end of his masters as well, whilst working, and just an all-round amazing person. And today we're going to be talking about a simple question, but very interesting nonetheless. How do we find success? So, how are you, Sean?
I'm good, but with that intro, I mean, you got to say it. I'm sat right here, don't you?
I'll edit it after. No, the first question I guess we can talk about is what is success? What would you call success?
I think it depends on your definition. I mean, some people success is social, some people's success is money, some of it is position of influence within an organization, life goals. You know, maybe you're interested in getting involved in some sort of project at a certain level within the particular industry that you're looking at. For me, that's the engineering industry, nuclear specifically, but you know, there are plenty of large scale engineering endeavors in the world. So yeah, it depends on your definition, really, for me.
What is success specifically for you then?
I'm driven by a couple of things. So I understand the value of my time, and that's pretty important to me. So for me, one of the drivers, so this is a multivariate equation, really. It's not as clear cut as I run towards money or I run towards power or any of those things. For me, it's more along the lines that for a 37-hour week, which I never do, but hypothetically, for a 37-hour week, I want to obtain the most amount of money for my time, because I'm never going to get that time back. That's the only limiting factor in my life. So once you look past that, you're looking at what your skills are for me, and the interest that you can obtain from the role, and the influence you can have on, I guess you can say, whatever the product is. So the product for us is energy generation as a whole. So for me, it would be, how best can I perform my role within this organization, and what areas for me are areas for development that both utilize my existing skill set and give me the potential to further my knowledge or my exposure within the business. So for me, I would say those two are the primary drivers, really.
So I'll try and put that together a little bit and tell me if I've interpreted that correctly. So success incorporates maximizing the value of your time, and that's some subcomponents of that are building competence, gaining skills, and gaining a positive influence or impact in your business unit, in your domain.
Yeah. That's a good summary.
Yeah, that's kind of career success. What's personal success? What success would you find outside the realms of work?
Okay, so outside of work, I would say success for me, anyway, is a family. Like I've always wanted a family since I was young, and we had my son 2 years ago, and yeah, that's been the most fulfilling aspect of my entire life. Yeah, absolutely incredible. Spending time with him, everything. Yeah, it's a standard parent answer, probably, but yeah, for sure. And in and around that, providing a stable family life with a partner that I can share goals with. Obviously, everyone's an individual, so we have our own individual goals, we have our own individual ideas, and we pull towards those. But you need to share a unified goal in some sort, at least one big, I would say, unified goal. And that can be something like, you want a specific house, or you want a specific standard of living, or you want them to go to a certain type of school, or, you know, all these kinds of things that involve two people pulling towards one, and some form of combined thinking. So I would say they're the kind of social goals I have in my mind, that I see as social success for me. And that is a family, a stable environment in which to bring that family up with someone that I share common goals with, and have a successful relationship with. And so really, personally and professionally, all of that takes work. None of that is a given. None of that can be left to nurture itself. You know, you have to be present in all parts of your life to have success in all parts of your life, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's some good things pinging up in my mind there. And one of them would be, all of those take work. And that's quite evident that nothing that we get for free really makes us feel good. You know, and I think it's quite clear when people get these lucky breaks, you know, you could say people get lucky when they win the lottery. They've got some success. It's like, no. They got a whole bunch of money and they don't know what to do with it. And they end up not in a good place, you know. And I think the best example I saw was this one couple who won the lottery, but then carried on with their jobs and lived their life as they were, but just had a little bit better stuff, you know, and just took a little bit better holidays. Yeah,
you need purpose, don't you? It can't. Well, in my opinion, purpose is pretty important to an individual. Some people, and not many, are able to provide that purpose. But most people need some form of purpose. And I think if you win a load of money, that's where things go wrong, because a lot of people can't provide that purpose, that direction, and they'll just live life in a way that's not sustainable for either the money or for them. And it's like you say, you know, there's no value in things you get for free. Like you can think of countless examples of that in your day, in the privilege we have in the societies we live in, that we don't struggle. You know, we're able to do things like this. You know, I mean, I'm able to do the job I do, or all of these kind of things that are given. So you in a way, you should be grateful for them. But how often do they come up in your mind? They won't. They're not going to be a focus, because they're your 0 point. You know, so yeah, there's no worth in anything you get for free.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the point you made about goals and shared goals, and that links onto the dopamine response when we move towards goals. You know, goals being things that we want, and then gradual progression towards things we want, releasing dopamine along the way. And then when you actually get the thing you want, you need to have a new goal. You need a next step, because that's what regulates our mood. That's what keeps us, we could say, happy, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what do you think holds people back?
So I'll pull from my personal reflections of myself and defining moments for me. I'll also draw from what I see as someone who's recruited in other people, what I've seen in the career progression of developing people, and so I have a reasonable experience. I'm by no means an expert, but my trains of thought, I think, hold some validity in this. And I would say the things that hold people back. So the first and foremost, really, for me, would be some people just don't necessarily want that, which is fine. So if we put aside the people that aren't interested in a certain direction, and are just interested in the hand that they have fallen themselves into, and they're content with that, we'll push that aside. And the people who want to achieve more, and what holds them back, I would say a proportion of them don't understand the quantity of work involved in success. You know, whatever direction you're talking about, personal, professional, it requires work. So you've got a proportion of people there that either are unfamiliar with that level of work, or are unwilling to do it because they believe there's a level of I have been there a certain amount of time, therefore I am owed. There's almost this perception that they will get something by default, almost just by being present, and by knowing their job. And they don't understand the quantity of work it takes to shift in a direction upwards or sideways, for more exposure in a certain element of whatever industry you're in. So Yeah, unfamiliarity with the amount of work would be the first one. The next one I would say is lack of confidence. I see so many people who are extremely capable and look at something that they want. And I have two examples only within this last month of people who've come to me and they're like, I don't think I'm applicable for this, but I really want it. And then we review the things they've delivered, the things they've been involved in, their knowledge base. And I'm like, you're absolutely applicable for this. In fact, you're a strong candidate, and it always surprises them. And I think that lack of confidence in individuals can manifest in a couple of ways. It can manifest at that stage initially, and it can stop people putting in. I think it can also hamper them in the interview stage. But for those that don't even put themselves into that position in the first place, those that never even get to the stage of looking at the job advert, I think it can freeze them in time because it gives them a sense that they've never failed almost, because they've wanted something but they've never put in, and they've never had to experience that loss. But success is never built without failure. That's just a fact. I'm yet to meet the person who has proceeded within their career or within their life with no failure whatsoever on either front. I don't believe that's possible. I think you can have a good track record, let's say, but I don't think it's possible to experience no personal or professional failure in your life if your aim is success in either of those.
So I guess the importance there is to reframe the concept of failure and reframe the concept of failing. So I agree with you completely. No one does their first leadership interview, for example, and does a good job.
Yeah.
They might be awesome in the role, but they've never answered those questions before. And yeah. I've noticed in myself when I've done interviews for specific roles before, I'll apply to every version of that role in the world until I get that role. But what that means is I constantly practice those interviews one by one, and I get better and better and better at answering the questions. But it doesn't make me a better candidate for the role. It makes me better at answering the questions. Now, perhaps there's a little bit more to it than that, but I definitely think the concept of reframing failing and making mistakes. And then I just think, what do you think about this? Another potential barrier being getting too caught up when you do fail.
Yeah. So you do see that. But as someone who is invested in other people's success within my industry, for me, I try and bring people back up as soon as possible, give them a way forward, let them know their strengths as well as their areas for improvement. I think it's important to highlight to people when they are in that position that this is just a stepping stone to where you want to be. You needed this experience to do better next time. You needed this experience to highlight the gaps between where you want to be and where you are now. It's almost a benchmarking activity. So yeah, rebound quick, in my opinion. At least that's the way I frame it to myself. And it seems to work with other people because you're focusing on moving forward. You're focusing on addressing those gaps and increasing your level of experience. And also now they know what to expect when they come into that environment again. So yeah, it's almost empowering the position you find yourself in the aftermath. It's just getting to that mental state of finding yourself to be empowered rather than crushed.
I guess I have another question relating to success and a feeling of success in yourself. To what degree does empowering other people and paving a way to success for others play a part in feeling successful as yourself?
For me personally, quite a significant amount. Professionally, I feel more accomplished when I've helped other people move to the position they want to be in or into the area of the business that interests them. For me, I think having involvement either in people's development or in their application process and guiding them through what areas of their personal professional, let's say, experience to focus on, I think it's good, especially when they achieve it. You feel like you've achieved something. I would also say that it's not perfunctory in the sense of you just putting people forward for things, irrelevant of their capability. You're trying to put the best people forward, wholesale, because by putting better people in roles in the organization's going to run away that it didn't previously. It will be leaner, it'll be more agile, it will be more profitable, in our industry anyway. But, I guess in other industries, those principles still apply. You're looking at your end product, whatever it is, you'll better achieve it. And you'll have better understanding and better cross-functional support within the entire unit, whether that's a school, whether that's a power station or whatever it is. So I think, there's a lot of personal, I don't know the right word. There's no real gain in it as such, but a lot of personal satisfaction in nurturing that element of it. I also think it works in the favor of the business.
I do think there is personal gain in it, because if you've facilitated the growth of 100 individuals over a 3-year period in a job, of that 100 individuals, some of them might go above you. Some of them might advance more quickly, and they'll look fondly upon you. And then another point would be the people above you are watching how well you facilitate others, and they're looking at how you communicate with your team. And if everyone in your team loves you and 50% of your team have elevated, they're going to look on you more favorably for future promotions yourself as well.
So I recognize that. And that's why I was a little hesitant in committing to my statement at the end there, because when I said there's no real gain, I meant there's no immediate monetary, there's no tangible gain. But there is, of course, the gain that you spoke about there. And that's a very real thing. Yeah. That is a very real thing. So I've heard it from people that have moved into other departments via mine, and I've helped them through to that. They've always turned around and been like, oh, when we go over here, if you need any of this work doing, you just give me a call. I'll prioritize it. I'll make sure it gets done. You know what I mean? And that might be the right or wrong thing to do, prioritizing that work in that moment. But certainly it shows there is credence in your saying there, in what you brought forward. So that is a real thing.
Yeah. So I guess we talked a bit about what holds people back, maybe those fears, maybe being crushed by failure, lack of confidence, that could come into the fear aspect as well. What do you think fires people forwards? What drives people?
I think if you've got direction, that helps. But for years I was directionless, so that's not necessarily a problem. What drives people forwards? For some people, it's money. For some people, a particular desire for a position of authority. I guess the former isn't necessarily wonderful because it's not. Yes, you may earn loads of money, but you're probably not going to be amazing in your role if your only goal is money. I think it is a motivator and it can come into the equation, but it can't be a sole motivator, because that doesn't necessarily, in my experience, produce the best people in the best roles. Power, again, same thing. I would say other motivators, awareness in your organization. So a lot of people like to see how the whole thing works, and whether that be teaching in different grades to see how you'll deal with those kind of situations, and you'll deal with that element of the curriculum, and the different. I'm not going to know the right word because it's not my industry, but the different developmental stages of a child that you will come across and how you interact with them from a learning perspective. So I think people who are trying to maximize their awareness within their organization and be as effective as they can, that's a motivator. That comes into part of my equation. But some people that might be entirely, and those that have that as their entire equation will probably be the most effective for the wider organization. I think another motivator would be past. I think past is always a good motivator. It depends on where you came from. If you came from loads of money, loads of privilege, your motivation to be able to achieve something is going to be relatively low. Whereas if you came from poverty and you had the opportunity to increase the standard of living for yourself, and if you do very well, the wider family, I think that's a motivator. Are there any motivators you consider?
I think people coming from wealth may well still have motivators of an equivalent standing, in that they may feel a crushing weight to prove themselves, and they may never feel like they prove themselves. One of my favorite, well, you can't really call him a speaker, but he's called David Goggins. He was a US Marine, and now he does like ultra marathons, running 100 miles. Amazing person to listen to if anyone has a chance. Where am I going with that? What was the question again? Sorry, I got distracted thinking about David Goggins.
Personal motivators. So I'd exhausted my main ones. I've got a couple of peripheral ones, but I was asking, what do you see as personal motivators?
Oh yeah. So one thing he says is people who have come from a place of riches, let's say, they may never get to feel like they've achieved anything, because they may always look and go, I had a foot up there, I had a leg up there. I think I like an analogy, like, say if you've got a cake and you put it in the baking tray and then you start to cook it, and then it slowly grows until it's bursting out of that baking tray, right? So each time we go into a new role, we're a new piece of dough in a new tray, and then we cook, and then we burst out of that role. We can't be contained in that role anymore. We need more. And then we move to the next row, but as we move, we transform back into the dough. And then we need to bake ourselves out of that again. It's like, it's a desire for additional competence. You know, as you mentioned, growth, we need more. And maybe not everyone. You did mention before that not everybody wants that. I did want to ask, what do you mean when you say not everybody wants that? Do you mean not everyone wants success, or not everyone wants to fire up the employment?
Not everyone wants to fire up the employment ladder, because their version of success is different to, let's say, my version of success. So, you know, they can come in, they can they can come in on, let's say, to take it out of industries, they can come in on the base level of job, but they really enjoy that job, and their aim was to do this kind of work, and they get a lot of fulfillment from doing that kind of work. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that mentality whatsoever. They've achieved their level of success, and you don't know their journey in getting to that level of success as well. So, you know, they could have put just as much effort into get to there, but that's where they're happy with. That's where they've determined their end point is.
Yeah, and perhaps their levels of success are more determined, like you said, by external things from the employment.
Yeah, I imagine, you know, well, in fact, I know a lot of people. I know some very capable, very intelligent individuals that I've asked them, you know, this opportunity is coming up, you know, you'd be very well placed for it because of your knowledge, your experience in the industry, and your professionalism in your role. Very well considered. You should consider putting an application in. And they still have to produce the result on the day, of course. You know, they still have to interview. You know, it's a fair shake, but ultimately, you know that they would have a good swing at it because of their position and everything I just said. But they're not interested, and some of that is because they don't want the extra responsibility. Some of that's because they like the dynamic of how they receive work and how they transact work on a daily basis in their current role, and they can't see trading that in as a benefit, regardless of money or anything. And some people genuinely just have absolutely no desire to be in another part of the organization. They want to work in this specific area, delivering this specific product.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I guess the next question kind of leads into the point of this kind of groundwork that we're setting there, which would be like, what pathways to success do people have? And a follow-up it's a very complicated question, I know, but a follow-up question would be, and how does this change at different ages?
Pathways to success, I think it's industry dependent, really. But I guess if you're starting out, whatever you're going into, there's a couple of pathways I would suggest. The first would be apprenticeship. Next would be formal education all the way up. And then the next would be industry experience. I would say the hardest of them to be successful in would be your initial industry experience with no apprenticeship and no qualifications. I think it's very hard, and you'll find it difficult getting into any kind of larger scale company because they will have minimum academic requirements, and they're often quite low. You'd be surprised at how low they are, but they're to allow for people who've done apprenticeships and maybe the highest achievement they've got or will get or have the desire to get is a HNC. That can take you quite far, and you'll generally get HNC offered as the final part of most apprenticeships.
What is a HNC, by the way?
Higher National Certificate. So
okay.
It's,
how long does that take people on average?
A year to 2 years. They're really not. And so I did a HNC and I was on day release for 18 months. So it's not a massive invasion of your life. They're not hard to achieve. And by no means am I the best academic out there. Like academia as a whole, formal learning isn't necessarily something I enjoy at all whatsoever. Yeah. So I'm not gonna. It's not hard to achieve.
The follow-up question there is: if higher academia isn't your favorite thing in the world, why the degree? Why the masters?
2 reasons. First is to be competitive in an international environment, you need to be better than other people. So I have a good amount of experience. I have a good amount of knowledge. So I'm capable to field on that element of it. But if someone came in with the same level of experience and knowledge as me and a degree, they're going to trump me on that. So I need to at least get a degree. Then you start doing a degree and you realize, okay, well, I should probably just do a master's because then that puts me above everyone with a degree, irrelevant of what grade I get. So then you're doing a master's because then no one is going to have a PhD you go against because they are unlikely to have industry experience in the quantities you've got because their PhD experience will be more academic experience. So yeah, it'll be, I'm yet to see that. I'm sure it does exist, but we're probably talking less than 1%. So I wouldn't try mitigating that professionally at all.
The data I looked at was that it was worth doing a degree because of the increase in earnings over your lifespan. It was arguably worth doing a master's because of the increase in earning over your lifespan, but earning a PhD above a master's didn't correlate with increased earnings.
I'm not in the least bit surprised by that. And that also, so from the engineering perspective, that also ties in with my second reason, which is chartership. If you're going to go international, the UK system for engineers does not have an accreditation that is formal for being an engineer, let's say. So if you go to Canada or the US, you're on, I don't know the exacts of it, so please check your own stuff out online. But for me, my understanding is that they all go into a register like doctors do, and that professional register you have to pay a sub to each year. And that gives you credence within that country that you have met a certain standard. The UK doesn't have that. You finish university as an engineer and you can be an engineer. There's no professional body that assesses your work. It is down to the workplace, and they have the legal responsibility to say that work's delivered to a certain standard. There's an element of that on the individual through the organization, but ultimately it's not the same level as other countries, and it's not limited to the US and Canada. Many other countries subscribe to that, and in my opinion, that's a better way of being. But we'll put that to the side. So the equivalent in the UK, in order to be recognised in other countries, is chartership. So depending on your flavour of body, so you've got like the IMechE for mechanical, you've got the IET for electrical and control and CNI and that kind of thing, and you've got, I can't remember the leadership one. That's pretty poor, but yeah, there is a leadership organisation out there that's linked with the IET, so that if you get chartership with one and your experience is relevant, you can have it with both. So for me, the need to do the degree and masters was one of chartership initially. It was, how can I put myself ahead of other people in terms of career prospects, in terms of promotional routes, all that kind of thing. And I didn't want to get to a ceiling at some point in my career and someone have it written in the small print, must have a degree. because that should not be a limiting factor at all, especially when you consider experience. So I wanted to eliminate that before I even came to that hurdle. But fortunately, so the masters came about because, well, I'm already doing it, I might as well do a master's, because I had the same kind of perception that you had. Degrees seem to become the norm, so you want to be above the norm. And fortunately, only in the last, I think, 12 months, the IET has changed their chartership requirements to a master's. You can get it with a degree, but it's a lot harder. But a master's now will get you chartership. So, yeah, everything fell right. But I don't necessarily believe in everything falling right. I think prior preparation.
Oprah has a good phrase. Luck is just opportunity meeting proper preparation. It's something like that. I've definitely misquoted her, but
I'm sure you have. But that exact mentality is 100% what I subscribe to. An opportunity comes up, and I see it countless times. An opportunity comes up, and people in the organization start moving in ways they weren't earlier, and they start trying to put themselves in a position where they're able to achieve this opportunity. But they never did anything before that. So when they don't get it, they're like, yeah, but I was doing this, I was doing that. And I was like, yeah, but for 3 months. You know, whereas the people you're up against, you know, they're people of a different kind. Exactly. There was no monetary gain at all for some of the things. So a high level example for me is I'll take a position where there's no monetary gain. I'll take a position where there is no guarantee that this will get me anything or do anything. It is extra work and I don't get extra time for that. All those kind of things. And the aim behind that will be to expand my experience, expand my knowledge, develop skills that I don't possess or I know are poor within my current skill set. And when those positions come up, you've got the intellectual knowledge, you've got the practical experience, and you're proven. People understand what you are. And if the role is a particularly hard one, they can see you've ironed out some of those creases. So they'll know that if they put someone in who doesn't have that experience, they're going to have to go through that learning curve. You've already gone through that. You've already experienced that, and they can see the output of that, and they can hear your reflections from that. So yeah, I've never obtained anything because the stars aligned.
Yeah. So I guess we just kind of went over, there's different pathways to success, incorporating education, higher education, although not necessary. They can give you an edge. Apprenticeships and getting experience, and definitely something I found at the start of my career in education was it didn't matter what qualifications you had trying to get the leadership role, they cared how much experience you had. So the extra qualifications didn't really do much. And the grades, interestingly, even in education, people didn't care about the grades.
No.
You know, they wanted to know, what project did you lead on? How was it successful? How do you know it was successful? What project did you lead on that wasn't successful? Why wasn't it successful? What would you do next time? Those are the questions they want you to be able to answer. They don't want to know, what GPA did you get? What grade did you get in your master's? You know, a good example, I won't name names, but I worked with somebody who had a PhD in education, and he ran his own department in the school, but the whole department beneath him didn't like having them as their line manager, because as far as experience in schools go, he didn't have enough to be managing a group of people and leading a department. And I guess that follows to the next question, like what are the different pathways?
I'll just interject there if I can. I'll say that everything you said about what they're looking for in that is identical to this industry. So I imagine purely from how transferable those things sound, they would be relevant in all industries. It might not be a project you're leading, it might be an activity or whatever, but yeah, I think experience counts for an awful lot, and it'll show competence in your role that a qualification can't. And never have I ever seen, and I've done a fair chunk of recruitment at this point, never have I ever seen a recruiting panel look at two people's applications and say, this one got a first and this one got a 2-2. I've never seen that. I've never seen it. It doesn't exist. It's and if it does, that is not the general. You should not be worrying about yeah, you should not be worrying about that as a mitigating thing that you need to address. Yeah, in my opinion, through my experience, and it sounds the same as yours there. So sorry, continue.
No, I agree with that. I can't imagine a circumstance where they go, this person got a first and this person got a 2-1 or a 2-2. Perhaps if they were applying for jobs in academia as lecturers, but that's a very specific field.
Yeah. We're now at less than 1% of jobs in theory that would be. So, you're not, that's not the norm.
No.
However, I would say if you're in doing your degree, do try your best because you want the biggest leg up you can get. And if you're more familiar with the material, you'll obtain a better grade, but you'll also be more familiar with the material. So you'll field a better interview. You'll have more knowledge and experience to draw upon. So that's not an excuse to get a third.
No, I agree with that as well. I agree. And a lot of, speaking for people who are doing degrees, a lot of employers will have graduate schemes. And a lot of those graduate schemes will have a limiting factor, like you need a 2-1 or whatever specific grade to be allowed on our graduate scheme. How do you think as we get older, how do you think the pathways to success change?
I think you stop gaining access to certain pathways. So an example for me would be, I was late onto an apprenticeship. And if I'd have been a year older, I don't think I'd have been able to get onto it. And I was 25 when I went for one, and they're not often keen on taking older people. But our organization actually started raising it's like they started raising the base wage, basically base age a lot. That they were taking people in at. So we're still taking people straight from school because that's actually changed in the UK now, isn't it? People are supposed to finish sixth form, I believe.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. I'm a bit out of touch with that. So we used to take 16-year-olds, so now it'll be 18-year-olds. But I think that's the preference really was to take people sort of in their late teens, only because of the knowledge and experience that the life has given you. So your skills within a work environment are better. So I was fortunate to be, I guess you could say, at the tail end of the age bracket, if there is such a thing. So I'd say that kind of dries up a bit. I can't recommend apprenticeships enough. That gave me a lot of direction, and it enabled me to study again at a time when I couldn't have funded study. So yeah, that's a big access route. But I think as you get older, that starts to dry up. If you would say to me, a 35-year-old was applying for an apprenticeship scheme, I would be highly surprised if they could get on it. I don't think there's legislation to say they can't, but I'd be highly surprised if they got on it, because you have to look at the intake they're going into and how they would integrate within that and how they would come through that level in the organization. They might be perfect for it, but I don't know. I've never seen it. I've never seen a 40-year-old apprentice. Again, it might just be the minority, but yeah, I do think that dries up as you get older. I also think academically, you struggle a little bit to commit to full-time education, because running a job at the same time as studying is expensive. If you're running a job and you've got a family and you're trying to study, now that's taking even more people out of the bracket that can either afford that or can perform at that level, let's say. Like there are plenty of people that have the capacity to be able to achieve a degree, but I would say there are less people that can achieve a degree, have a family, and work at the same time. It just requires a lot more energy.
Yeah, a lot more. I would say energy. Yeah, you've got a finite capacity, and you can spend that capacity like a currency throughout the day. I'll give this much to this much capacity to my wife, this much to my kid, this much to my job. Now you've got 10% capacity left. What are you going to give that to?
Yeah, exactly.
For some people, that 10% isn't enough to achieve a degree.
Yeah.
How do you think someone in their 40s with nothing behind them, no strong experience, no leadership experience, no profession, no qualifications, what do they do?
So for me, there's a couple of routes that I think are viable. The first would be to look at how you can put your existing experience in the workplace to the kind of organization that you're interested in working in. Because I'm assuming you're talking about changing industries as such there, yeah?
Well, I would assume this person doesn't have an industry. Perhaps they've only got an entry-level job, which they've done for a period of years.
Okay.
Not in an excelled manner.
Okay. I would still say that you'll have some skills and attributes you'll have learned within that job that are transferable to a base level of entry into whatever kind of position you wanted. You'll have to work your way up to get to the desired thing that you're interested in if it's not the base level. But I think getting your foot in the door is the most important thing, and recognizing the fact that that will not always be comfortable to you, whether that be financially or whether that be because you're not massively interested in the job you're about to go into. I think you need to see that more as a stepping stone and try and work past that. So I think that would be one route. Another route would be see if there are any employers that will sponsor you through a qualification and go through that. No doubt a lot of employers either hold you to a repayment clause if you leave the company within a period of time. I've seen that before. Other ones hold you to a time period. So you don't have to repay it, but you've got to work for us for 3 years, and that's written into your contract or something akin to that. So that would be another route I think is viable. A third one would be, none of these are comfortable though, because the situation you've given me there, I want to be clear on this. The situation you've given me there is one of no major funds, no major experience, and no major qualifications. So whatever you're going to do from that position, you need the drive to see that through. And that means turning up every single day when your mind's not in the right space and doing it, doing it when you're tired, doing it, whatever. Like you got to be pretty single-minded to get yourself out of a poor situation. But I do believe that's possible in the vast majority of cases. If not all, but some situations are extreme. So I don't want to say all, but I do mean the vast majority. It's possible to dig yourself out of that.
I think one of the key things for people in that circumstance is letting whatever industry you want to go to, you need to go and find people in that industry and tell them you want to go to that industry. Whatever job you get, you need to tell your manager or your line manager or your supervisor, I want to be proficient at this job. I don't know enough to be the best right now, but I want to be the best. And then when you feel competent, if you want a promotion, you need to tell people that you want a promotion. Your manager doesn't know you want a promotion if you don't tell them. And then you don't know how to get a promotion. Why would you know how to get a promotion in that domain if no one's giving you any advice? The person above you has done it. They know how to get there. So they can say, oh, I did these things and it worked for me. You can copy that.
Yep. Yeah.
You can copy it with your own spin.
Yeah, 100%. I see a lot of that. So in our organization, we've got personal development plans. So you can go that formally, but informally seems to work a treat. And by that, I mean, you go to someone that you perceive as a mentor, and that can either be your line manager, or it can be an individual in the organization that you see as a high performing individual and who has progressed other people themselves, or certainly guided them through more development within their career. And yeah, I think that's a totally viable route. But if you're quiet about it, it's exactly as you say, you'll not see anything. Time passes. People appreciate people who work in their current role and don't move. They're pretty reliable, they're pretty stable, and they build a good experience base. Like it's a loss losing those people from your team. Only a week ago did I hear of someone, not in our business, I heard it through someone else, actually in teaching. Someone gave a poor reference to a TA that they didn't want to lose. And
wow.
That, I know. That is literally a different language to me. I don't understand that at all. I think that's disgusting. But that took place because they couldn't think of anyone that they could get to replace this person that would be as good. So they gave them a poor reference. Yeah. So yeah. Not everyone's out there to help you, which is why the formal and informal routes should be explored both same time, go for as much as you can, because most people have integrity within their work. Most people are interested in helping you realize whatever thing you want So if you went to your line manager and said, I want to do this, I need the experience, my day job's not going to suffer, I'm going to put the extra work in, whether that be however you can cram it into your day, or whether that be you stop back a little bit and work on it, or whether that be a formal secondment if the business can support that, that they'll enable that. Like most managers will enable that. Also, they see the fact that if they put in someone with that knowledge and experience into another part of the organization, that they're inadvertently, once they've trained someone up to the level that you were at when you left their department, they're going to be in a better position, because they're going to have whatever inputs and whatever outputs you deal with in your group, let's say, they're going to be better understood, better engaged with. So you're going to be in a position where you have an easier time at the front and back end of your process, I guess you could say.
Absolutely.
So that's the reason to speak about it. And that for any leaders watching, push your good people to where they want to be. If some of them want to stay in your department or group or whatever, fantastic, wonderful. Do everything to retain them, because you can build on them. Those that want to leave, that are high performing, let them leave. Nurture them, move them onward. You'll buy yourself so much more in the wider organization. Yeah, it'll be pain in the succession management element of it, but there's never a reason to hold anyone back from what they want to do.
Yeah, I guess this is a good point to add in from my side. Pretty much every circumstance I've ever worked in, I've had about 30 or 40 jobs. The people in the leadership roles, almost always, they've wanted to set things up so people can progress. They've not been power hungry, damning the group, trying to suck the life out of everyone all the time.
The dog out of the room.
Yeah, the best behaved dog in the world. Yeah, they want the best for people. And maybe like the first rung managers, they a little bit more abrasive, but once you move up the hierarchy, it's really hard to maintain a position whilst tyrannizing everyone beneath you.
Yeah,
there's a great piece of research about chimps. I forget the name of the research, but I'll put the link beneath. Chimps who assert dominance through aggression and violence, they don't have long and stable reigns as chimp leader. They get torn up by chimps beneath them in the hierarchy. And chimps that move up the hierarchy and do things like groom the females, play with the chimp kids, chimplets.
Chimplets.
They have long and stable rules. So we see this in chimps, and we see it in people.
And from someone who sees that in the kind of organization we're in, there's all flavors of leadership, and those that are more tyrannical in their leadership are very few, and they're also capped on how far they can move, and they're also capped on who wants to work for them. You often have to force people into those groups, and they use that as a stepping stone to whatever they want to do in the future. So they take a bit of discomfort in the short term, but they don't have keys people waiting to work for them. They don't have high performing individuals interested in getting in that group. You do see that kind of thing. That's not to say that they're never going to have high performing individuals in the group, of course. But I mean, speaking as a general, from what I have seen, generally high performing people want to go to people that are going to nurture their need for either progression or knowledge and experience. And you're going to get that from a leader who cares, whereas a leader who's like, shut up and do your job, I'm not interested in what you want as an individual, is not going to give you that.
Yeah, if you don't keep employees, if you don't keep your team happy, they will leave. Or maybe happy is a weak word, but if they're not satisfied in their work, if they don't have autonomy, if they feel like you tyrannize them, they will leave. And the best people are the most likely to leave because they have the most options.
Yeah. And also productivity. You see a difference in productivity. When someone's gone from a team where they don't have that autonomy, they don't have that respect, that interaction that openly with their line manager, they they perform probably half capacity, and maybe that's enough to not get them on disciplinary. Maybe that's enough to keep their job ticking over, and the organization's never going to raise it, and they can spend 10, 15 years doing that and not blink. But that's not effective use of resource for an organization. That's also not like effective leadership. That's also not good for someone's mental health and well-being. But if you give them the space, the time, as much as an organization can, because obviously there are time constraints within a lot of activities, people will generally work harder when happier. That's a direct correlation I've seen. And you need to work out, I think, as a leader, your success as a leader is determined by the success of your team. Because you're not doing the work as such. You might be managing the stakeholders and communicating as appropriately and determining direction, but you're not transacting the work. The people are.
Yeah.
So you want to maximize that, and part of that is giving the autonomy and the respect, and ensuring that it's two-way. Like, you'll have expectations of the people that work for you, but they should have expectations of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I have one last question. That would be, what do you think are the characteristics or the other personality traits that we need to be successful?
That's a good question. I would say general characteristic traits, ones that anyone can pick up, to whether they're harder or easier to dedicate themselves to. Motivation. Like, motivation wanes with everybody. There's peaks and troughs. However, having the consistency to deliver and to make sure you actually put the effort in every single time, irrelevant of motivation, is a key character trait. So be motivated. And if you're not a naturally motivated person, force yourself. It's not comfortable, but force yourself. Be single-minded in your approach. Like, be open to all. I don't mean this in the sense of your way is the only way. No, not at all. I mean, be single-minded in the approach, in the sense that you need to be looking at what you want to happen, what you want to materialize. And it might be an opportunity that doesn't even exist right now. You need to be looking at that. For some people, that can be a beautiful car. For some people, that can be a specific job. For some people, that can be moving one level up in the organization, of irrelevant of what the job is, that kind of thing, or a change of industry, whatever it is. Or arguably, it can be finding the right person to settle down and have a family with, but whatever it is, whatever your determination of success is, you need to move towards that single-mindedly. You need to explore every possible opportunity, open as many doors as possible, go down all of those routes until one of them pans out. It's not going to fall in your lap. So, just keep moving forward. There'll be days when, do I still want this? Just move forward on those days. Of course, you can revise your targets at any point, but if you revise them at every single time that you doubt your direction, you'll never go anywhere. You'll just always be changing direction. So, yeah, pick a direction and stick to it, as long as it is in keeping with your wider goals, and it meets you at different stages within your life.
Absolutely. I can speak from my own experience. What works really well for me, and there's two ways people think about this. There's a body of research that says when you tell people what you're doing, you release dopamine and you can trick yourself into thinking you're doing it even though you're not. Pretty credible research, believable. There's another body of research that says when you tell people you're doing something, you make yourself accountable to that, and you're more likely to go and do it. So these are opposing things, and I think it probably comes down to individuals. Now, what works well for me is going to everyone around me and going, I'm going to do this. I'm doing this. when I was writing my first book, I told everyone, I'm going to publish a book. I'm going to publish a book. I'm going to publish a book. And the first book came to the chasing down publishers, couldn't find a publisher who wanted to publish it the way I'd written it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to self-publish this book then. But then I'd already told everyone I was going to get a book published. So I was like, okay, how do publishers want you to go about? So for those who don't know, if you want to write a nonfiction book, you need to speak to the publisher first. They don't want you to write the book and give it to them. They want you to broach them with an idea, and then they'll work with you whilst you develop the idea. If you're writing a fiction book, it's the opposite. They want you to give them the book. They want you to give them a set of chapter summaries and give them the book. So I thought to myself, I need to write a second book, because I'd held myself accountable and everyone knew, but I guess for some people, they could trick themselves with that. And then the other thing I would say for people who want success, you need to break things down into the smallest steps you can, so you get that constant dopamine buzz. So when I wrote the first book, my rule wasn't write a page a day. It wasn't write a paragraph. It wasn't even write a sentence. It was write one word, because am I so weak and scared of writing that page or starting the work that I can't write one word? No, I often wrote, every day I would open it, I'd write one word. There were some days I only wrote one word, but most days it would be a page, 2 pages.
Well, that's still progression. That's the thing, that's still progression on your task. That's still turning up with the motivation and with the laser focus to be able to achieve that end goal. If you wrote one word every single day, it might be moderately incoherent with the end product, but you'd have something, you know what I mean? You'd have 50,000 words that you can look back on, and you can say, okay, well, this bit's good, this bit's bad, I need to restructure this. You would have a product. You would have something at the end to work with. Whereas for all those days you don't turn up and you don't write that one word, that's a day lost. Time will pass. That's what I always try and tell people when they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll look at my, so we have pay grades in our work. Maybe I'll look at my regrading in a couple of months. I'm just like, all that'll happen is 2 months will have passed and you'll still be sat there.
Yes.
And then that's fine at this end, but they're not seeing the back end, which is that's 2 months you're not getting paid more money for the same job.
Yeah.
And it's procrastination can be a thing. So credit to you on that. So even when you turn up and you write one word, credit to you on that.
Oh, I appreciate that, bro. Thank you.
So and what you said,
go on. No, go ahead.
What you said earlier about saying you are going to do something, saying that you are doing something, both of those two things, they came into the leadership training that we formally deliver within the company I work for. So you saying that there's credible psychology-based studies that have revealed that, well, they're credible enough that large-scale organizations are delivering that to their leaders.
Wow, that's very interesting. And is that something you do?
Yes. So a rough kind of high-level example for me would be when you are talking about a problem, you're trying to work your way through a problem with a group of individuals, and you see a way forward, and logically that's going to require an amount of work, and you're probably best placed to transact that, even though it's going to be uncomfortable. Moving forward and saying, we could do that, I'll do that, and it will enable all of this section of it, and it's, before anyone else has had a chance to say, oh, that's not possible, or that's too much work, or whatever, or, if you believe it's deliverable and you put your name to it, you will deliver it. You might set yourself up for a sticky one, but you'll deliver it. So that's my experience on it. And I think there is value in saying you'll do stuff, but sometimes that's uncomfortable. It's really easy to say you'll do something that's totally achievable and anyone could do. It's really hard to say you'll do something that nobody wants to do.
Yeah. And then when you proclaim to the world that you're going to do something, be prepared to fail.
Yeah.
Be prepared to not achieve it, and then have everyone look over you and think, he said he was going to do that and he failed it.
Yeah.
But you'll get it next time.
Yeah. And more than that, be open and honest about that with people. Don't hide your mistakes. you need to show that you can learn from these things, and you need to show that you're a human being. You know, if all you do is deliver, everyone's going to think you're a robot, or they're going to think you're not the kind of person that they can speak to, you know what I mean? Or they don't want to be near you. Yeah, like people need to see your failures. That's just a reality. And you need to involve people in how to recover from your failures. Because if you failed, you might know the answer as to why you failed, but if you don't know the answer to why you failed, you need to involve people in the recovery of that. Because from a personal standpoint, failure twice in the same vein, that's not okay. You know, that's preventable. And if it's preventable, it should be prevented.
You should have learned enough from the first failure to overcome that hurdle the second time.
Yeah. Otherwise, that's time wasted, you know? And then, you know, let's say from the professional perspective, rather than the personal perspective of time wasted, from the professional perspective, you're discrediting yourself as a product, but you're also showing that your decision making is wrong, because you're able to go into the same situation twice unaltered, which is a very unusual thing to do, and people will notice it, especially if failure resulted in both times. Bit off topic there.
No, valuable addition to the conversation, definitely. I'll try and recap what we've talked about. I might struggle a bit with this one, so I'll write a blog post doing a proper summary for this, I think, but I'll give it a go. So we talked a bit about what success is, and that brought in things like family, success in work, so progression up the hierarchy at work, gaining competence, increasing the value of your time. And then we also talked about the things that hold people back. So fear, perhaps, you know, lack of confidence, getting shot down and then struggling with the getting shot down process. Procrastination you brought up later on, which I agree with, that holds back everyone to some degree, at least. And then the things that fire people forward. So that's the desire to grow, the desire to expand, a feeling of lack of satiation in your role. You've outgrown it. It's time for you to take a step up. You feel that need. Something I think we can add there is perhaps the people above you aren't doing such a good job. Maybe you know how to do it better. Now, maybe you don't, but if you feel like you can, then you have a responsibility to try. And then the pathways to success, looking at academia, looking at apprenticeships, experience going down the middle. So starting the job and working and getting feedback and trying to grow in that manner. And then if you're older in life and some of those doorways are closed to you, seeking out the jobs and then making it heard that you want progression. And then we talked a little bit about the characteristics. Can you recap that part for me? I've just thrown an hour out at once, and yeah,
it's okay. Characteristics we talked about being motivated, being able to turn up, having that focus on things. They were the primary ones we focused on. But I would say taking time as an addition, actually, taking time to consider your mental health and check in on yourself, because there is such thing as burnout, and you don't want to go near it. So take stock.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's always an enlightening conversation with you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. For anyone who's got any questions about apprenticeships or different routes into engineering industry as a whole, stick it in the comments, I'll reply. But personally, brother, you've achieved some amazing things in your life. It's always a pleasure here.
Thank you, bro. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe. Have a good day.